All right, everybody, welcome back to this pre-scheduled episode, and thank you, Anchor, for that ad. Go ahead and continue on with our conversation about the greatest or most notable gaming peripherals that have ever graced gaming. I'm going to let Zach continue where he left off and continue talking about this.
Sorry, I get caught up in that theme, that music, man, is just jamming. Sorry.
I say we made a good choice.
Yeah.
I love that, the instrumentals on that, man. It's just...
The whole thing's an instrumental.
Thank you, Hellar, for the music.
I'm just saying, though, I just love that one. I can just listen to it for hours. Oh my gosh.
Maybe we'll do a podcast where we just sit here and listen to it.
Right? It's just starting from the beginning where, you know, like our opening of it, you know, the first 30 seconds, just the range you have between there. You know, you start off low and then he just picks it up and then it just drops. And then you're just like, and then you go. And that's just the first 30 seconds of it. And then just the rest of it's just... him and Senpai Records is I love their music.
He would like you to notice him, Senpai?
Yes.
Sounds and Soundtracks Part 2.
Yeah.
Podcast edition.
Music of our era.
So, going back to the podcast that we're actually doing, the Sony PlayStation circa 1994 came out with arguably the best controller yet. I would say most certainly. They not only added the 4 bumpers, if you will, R1-2, L1-2, and personally, I like, out of all the controllers so far that I've actually held in my hands and used, the D-pad in this one's definitely been the most comfortable for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something about the formatting. There's a reason why this largely became the way that controllers are to this day. The ergonomics, something to hang on to with your entire hand instead of it just being anywhere from just a couple fingers to like some weird combination of not all of them. This one was actually like you could game with this one for hours.
And you did with a lot of the games that were released on the PlayStation, was because I think this was one of the first systems that actually introduced CD.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was.
So
the old black bottoms.
Yeah, so this was the data being added to that stuff was a lot more than what was in cartridges.
Yeah.
You know what's so funny? Because Jen and I were talking about games, ye olden games, and I don't know how the laundry list was expansive with her, but we were talking about this, and I just so happened to want to go. What were the graphics look like if I went and looked at some of these games? And at the time, the MLB game that came out on PlayStation 1, I thought the graphics were spectacular, revolutionary, right? And then went back and looked at them now. I was just like, wow, that is just a green screen over what should be the crowd in Wrigley Field.
Like, even if you run them natively on a computer that, you know, or I mean, not a computer, a screen that would have existed back then, it didn't age well even in that respect. But I still go back and play some of those games from time to time. My personal favorite being Final Fantasy Tactics or the Legends of Dragoon.
Yeah, the one I play on the Wii is the Yoshi's World. That's the one I go back and play a lot. Yeah.
When you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that game. And I was like, wait, that's not played on or Sony PlayStation.
I thought the same thing. I'm like, that was Super Nintendo. But
Yeah.
But he did say it, so that makes sense.
No, I don't have a PlayStation anymore. I wish I did, because some of the games I remember playing on that were really fun. So
yeah. A lot of my memories came from the PlayStation.
Was this Chrono Trigger?
No. Crash Bandicoot, the MLB game, all the Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
To each their own, except for him.
Soul Reaver, Legacy of Kain.
Final Fantasy.
Oh, you don't like Final Fantasy?
I've never really gotten into it.
They're just, I think they're just overrated.
Don't get me wrong. A lot of them are overrated, but it's still a great game. It's just like, I don't know. A lot of them like pumping everything up to 7 level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they don't all deserve that.
I don't It was such a relief come Final Fantasy 9 and 10 to have a character that wasn't emo. Like, if you think of Cloud, who's like, I'm just doing this because I need money. And if you think of 8, Squall, he's just like, everyone had like this emotional downtroddenness to them. And then 9 comes along and you have Zidane, and he's just like, yeah, I'm the hero. And then you have 10, a blitzball athlete. And I never understood the need to have an emotional male protagonist.
I don't know. I was kind of the exact opposite because, like, to me, I mean, I know these are sci-fi worlds and you know, stuff like that, or history-fi worlds. But like having a negative viewpoint on having to deal with a disaster seemed realistic to me. It seemed reasonable. So then when they started coming out with happy, peppy-go-lucky characters, oh yeah, or don't let that get you down. I hated it. And that's saying it kind of nicely. Like it was off-putting because it made no sense to me. And I was like, well, how are you gonna face all this and not be a little down? But we're gonna do it anyways. But I'm not gonna like it.
The only games I remember playing, the only 2 games, was my father playing Resident Evil on this, and the damn liquor jumping out from the cop side because you're in the interrogation room, and the Mike, I'm looking at you because this is the game that me and you talk about a lot.
Dude, it's been so long since I've
Clown.
Twisted Metal.
Yeah.
Twisted Metal.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, Twisted Metal. This is the one. If I had this system, I'd probably be playing that the most. Even though I know the graphics are horrible, I am just picturing the graphics. But it's the fun of just driving around with, you know, getting the rockets, getting whatever you got, and just, you know, this would be the one reason why I would get that system. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
You just really want to get that
controller-wise-
over with.
Controller-wise, it's largely inspired by the other ones, specifically having a D-pad, having 4 buttons, the start and select button. But it also kind of took off on its own. Layout-wise, it actually put an equal distribution of space in between the 4 buttons, like plus style. Obviously, it kind of brought it in. But, like, it's nice.
On this one, each of their... I think the reason why they did separate this was because each of them were their own buttons.
Yeah.
Versus
being on the board, it was like I forgot what
A
the term is.
multi-directional sensor.
Yeah.
I think they might have been multiple buttons, but
Yeah, if you take them apart, it kind of it's like actually is its own individual
They each have their
inputs.
own
Yeah.
sensor kind of thing.
but it's just the way the connections work. Like when you're pressing one down, you have the chance, and I think that's the reason why, like on the Sega, you had the corners because you could actually use those.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't know that because only a few games actually use that part of it. But with this, the whole feel of the controller it felt right.
Yeah,
for
it
that
was
time.
it was a happy coincidence, if you will.
Yeah, and then since this is a Peripherals episode, this is, as far as I can remember, the first console that had external memories that you could
Yes.
use.
Oh, yes,
You would
yes.
plug it in directly to the console itself at this time.
Yeah, because I remember, I forget what game it was. It might have been PlayStation 2, but I don't remember. But I didn't have a memory card when I first got it, and I was playing a game, so I just fell asleep with the console on, and then woke up like it was, let's say it was Christmas or something, and then woke up the next day and continued playing.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a nice way to continue doing what you're doing on the cheap, but also warm your room. So, yeah, those are cold nights.
So this one was one of the first to have external memory. It didn't even have, I think, any internal memory for some of the stuff. The PlayStation 2 actually did have some internal memory, but it was only for system stuff.
Yeah. So that was unfortunately only for system stuff. So you still had to have. I think they expanded it to allow not 2 memory cards, but 4 for the PlayStation 2, though. Am I right? Yeah. So you still had to buy them, but it was better.
Well, and then with that with the PlayStation 2, you could actually use the PlayStation's 1 memory. They it slotted 1 could go to 2, but 2 could not go into 1.
Yeah, backwards compatible.
Yeah, it wasn't back. Or
but it wasn't. I guess the concept would be forward compatible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to make sure we touch on and not miss is that, at least at my recollection, the PlayStation was the first console to feature a multi-tap for controllers.
Feel free to
elaborate what you mean.
Yeah.
By
You plug in into the controller port, and you can have more controllers plugged into it.
Oh yeah, so you can have an actual intermediary plug-in, so that way you could plug in others into that. So it's like a USB
splitter.
Yeah, it's a USB bus where you can plug in multiple USBs, and all of them plug into a single one into your computer.
I forgot about that. It did have.
I did as well. Yeah. So that was also a pretty revolutionary peripheral device.
Oh my gosh, David.
I only bring that up because of what I think anticipates coming up next.
Yeah. So after all this talking about how great the physical design of the Sony PlayStation 1 circa 1994 with its 2 nice, comfortable grips, we move on to this... I don't want to say an abomination. It's like they saw the footprint of a dinosaur with like the whole 3 toes, and they're like, that has got to be the best idea for a controller design I've ever heard. So we have the Nintendo 64's Tri-Pronged controller.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think I ever played a game where I used the directional pad.
I did.
Yeah.
I tried.
I was thinking, I'm like,
It was
did anybody
weird.
ever use the one on the far left?
Yeah, no.
'Cause-
Like I've tried playing holding that, and then you just
It's
always
just
want to go
awkward.
for the joystick.
Yeah,
so
it's
you're
awkward.
just you're always just holding
GoldenEye.
it like this when you got this other controller right outside of your hand.
You're always these.
In a Blitz, you could use the controller.
Oh,
but it was always awkward to use that controller.
Yeah.
I actually learned to kind of do what we do now with that when they had the joystick down there, to actually use my thumb to use that a little bit more, still holding it.
Oh yeah. There's also a trigger underneath it.
Yes,
so you
the
couldn't
Z
even
button.
reach the trigger, the
Yeah.
Z, which we now know it as. Well, it was then. But you couldn't even reach that unless you were holding the.
it. Yep.
Yeah, so you either had access to the D-pad that you practically never used, or you could have the stick that you're going to always use, and then the Z button.
I want to say that this...
They also had bumpers, or
Yeah.
at least one bumper.
Yeah, it had the 2, and then it had the Z trigger.
Like, to illustrate to everybody how the D-pad and that L bumper was, like, in Ocarina of Time, when you wanted to move to your next window screen, you pressed Z to quick move. You didn't even press that L bumper.
No.
It was such a non-use for every, and like you just said that GoldenEye, you just used it how you would regularly use it.
With the joystick, the Z, and then
So no thumb pad.
with the joystick, the Z. I
Okay.
never other than like what Ronnie mentioned of the NFL Blitz, which by the way, amazing game.
Yeah. I know Glover, I think you had to use the stick on some stuff because he just didn't work right with
D-pad.
with a D-pad.
Just terrible. Though, if I remember correctly, this is where they allowed you to connect rumble packs.
Rumble packs.
Rumble packs, to the back of the controller itself.
Do
They had to be battery powered, right?
So
No, the Rumble Pack had just used whatever.
It was controlled. It fed off the cord.
Okay. I'm
So-
thinking of something else then.
Real quick, do you guys know what those look like?
The rumble packs.
Uh huh.
yeah, it's just a motor with a weight.
Yeah,
half
it's
circles. Right?
it's just like a half circle that spins really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
In fact,
That's
if
how
you,
our phones vibrate.
Yeah, if you remember when we had the controller for the
Seriously?
Forza
Yeah.
Horizons, yeah,
It's
the
just really
Forza
small.
Horizon custom Xbox controller, and it had the semi, like mostly see-through cover on the yellow for the left-hand holding part. You could actually see
See
that
it.
that
Yeah.
half disc.
I just realized that maybe kids might be watching this, but I'm
for
gonna
the
write down
gaming
what this
news,
feels like.
8:30.
Oh, okay. So with this, I actually think because that Rumble Pack, I remember you also thought that you could put a memory slot in there because
Yeah.
with the Nintendo 64 also had memory, but you couldn't remember certain things.
Yeah, when I was a kid and I would play it, I always wondered where the memory cards that fit into there were.
Yeah.
Then I later learned, yeah, it's a Rumble Pack.
You want to
Yeah.
know what I just wrote? Email the show. I'll write back.
It's Santa.
Related.
It's Santa. Poor Santa. That's all I got
Right?
to say.
Imagine having to make an iPhone, and you're not Apple. The loops that man has to go through in order to get you guys your Christmas wishes. Oh, it's just mind-boggling.
Next up.
Yeah. So going away from this one,
But this also was the first game that I played. Conker's Bad Hair Day.
Oh yes.
this one's pretty interesting. It's hard to just. It's like if you thought, what would a gaming controller, the most stereotypical gaming controller you could possibly get from Australia, like what would it look like? And Apple Bandai thought, you know what?
This one.
We got you, fam. We got you.
Australia needs a controller. G'day, mate.
Those buttons are so far spaced.
Yeah, it's
How are
But
supposed
if you
to hold
look
it?
at the bottom, what shapes do those look like?
The buttons.
Yeah, the buttons at the bottom.
I mean, I guess you'd hold it.
power.
No.
The middle one looks
Square, circle, triangle.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you see, yeah.
I can't see that. I can kind of see the square and circle. I can't see triangle from.
It's
Oh, well, would you look
I
at
just
that?
zoomed into it on my tablet. Yeah, no, that's from left to right, square, circle, triangle. It almost
So-
looks like the Assassin's Creed logo.
I'm
Zoomed in,
guessing
actually.
you'd hold it like this, and then those buttons.
no, you hold it right, and then
How are you supposed to push those buttons?
that's your start, your select, and all those type of buttons.
Yeah, so for all the people who wanted to game on Apple, well, their console was pretty short-lived, due in part to the Pimpins staging $599 USD, 380 European launch price. The system's controller was very strangely built. It has a D-pad on it, basically, that thing on the left. And then if you've ever looked at an old mouse from the bottom and you turn the little thing at the bottom, this one's laser, but you turn it and then out would pop the center of a deviled egg. And you'd have to replace that every couple weeks, otherwise it starts
Hard-boiled
smelling.
egg, not deviled
Or
egg.
hard-boiled egg.
You would have to clean it every couple of weeks.
Yeah, but basically that's what the underside of a mouse looked like, was that
Have you seen
ball
all?
thing.
Have you seen all the memes of people believing that it was actually a
Yeah, that was
hard-boiled egg
crazy.
yolk?
Like,
Oh, it's hilarious.
that's crazy. Like, but yeah.
But
so this one, what?
I was gonna say, but with this, the track speed, if it wasn't for the price, I think this, at least the center track, would have been awesome for gaming
Yeah,
because now you have a mouse-like feature.
this one. Yeah, this one's more or less like true 360,
Yeah,
and with the mouse feature on it, like even some controllers nowadays don't have something as effective or accurate, if you will, as such a design.
As a trackball.
But unfortunately, the this controller really just did not catch on, or the entire console at that price. Because remember, this is $19.95 USD. I don't have the conversion in front of me.
What
but
did you say the price was again?
It's $5.99, so $600.
Oh,
Yeah, that's more expensive back
it's
then.
an Apple though. It was built in house.
Yeah, that's more expensive back then than the Xbox One was shipping with Kinect. Because I was 5, right?
Yeah,
Was-
the Kinect was 5. Yeah.
So that's by a whole $100. That's not including the conversion of then monies to now monies.
Yeah, I think it was like $5.30 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Apple's always been very highly thought of itself.
Well, yeah, it's because everything's made in house.
Yeah. Not really. All right. But looking at failures, something that at the very least conceptually. Looking at something that's at least conceptually
You're making me feel great.
pretty cool. I thought it was a great idea. In fact, I got not this specific model, but a similar one for the Xbox. The Xbox original for NASCAR was a driving simulator type thing.
remember this.
The
Yeah, I
Microsoft
actually had one.
Sidewinder force feedback wheel circa 1997.
So maybe it was. No, it would. Never mind.
Yeah, so the one I had, obviously not this old, a lot of fun. In fact, my dad probably used it more than me. He's bought me he's probably bought me 2 specific items that are for video games, which is that setup, my version of that setup, and he bought me Cabela's once.
Mm.
But these were both things that he really liked, and he really played a lot.
Honestly, I had a version of this, but it was for the Xbox. This is what taught me to drive. If I'm being 100% honest.
Your dad didn't take you out to drive?
My dad had half a leg, bud.
He still could have taught you how to drive.
No, I learned driving either through the day he let me behind the wheel was we drove around the neighborhood, and
Just finished playing GTA?
no, we were coming back from church. I'd been bugging him for a little bit because he was talking about how his leg was bothering him and he couldn't drive anymore and he was tired. So he was like, we parked outside the apartment complex. He told me to switch. We got in, and that's when I just started driving from there.
That's how it works. Because the first time I ever got to drive to school, because I ended up moving to another city, but I went to the same school because I had a ride with my dad because he worked pretty close to where we went to school.
Mm-hmm.
So one day he was in pain because of his back, and it was finally my chance to strike, and I managed to convince him to let me put the skills that I developed with my driving simulator on NASCAR to the test, and he finally allowed me to. And yeah, it was pretty good. No car accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first.
That's my story.
Sticking to it.
First driving experience was driving back from. Oh gosh, what was it? We were delivering newspapers in the morning, and my dad's like, "All right, here you can drive," and this isn't just drive down the block. No, this is a good 30 minutes out.
Wow.
Being 13.
That answers my question.
Yeah, my son's gonna be 13. I'm like, all right, kid, I learned. All right, where's the parking lot?
I'm going to take you out at 2:30, 2:45 in the morning,
Right.
and you're going to drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best time to learn, too, as long as you don't have night blindness.
Yeah. Mine. Well, like my first driving experience with like learning to drive. I mean, other than the whole little kid sitting in your dad's lap driving down the street, was at I think it was Cruisin' USA or Cruisin' Exotica that used to be at the Round Table.
Yeah.
Like I played that so much when I took the behind the wheel lessons to get my learner's permit. They legit asked, "Have you driven before?" I'm like, "No, I just play a lot of driving games."
Because at the time, a lot of those arcade games, they were with the pedals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that, like it was supposed to be the second lesson that you go on the freeway. They're like, "Okay, well, you're driving pretty damn good, so and we had to drop the kid off that had the lesson before me.
Oh yeah, I remember doing that.
So it's like, okay, you're driving pretty damn good. So jump on the freeway here, and I'm like, oh shit. And I'm 5 minutes from the freeway, so like 5 minutes of actually driving behind the wheel of a car, and I'm like, okay, going on the freeway. And because they lived out in some rich motherfucker living out in Rancho Marietta. But that's besides the point.
So
It was pretty
since we got off topic a little bit about this, so like my first driving, I've been driving pretty much since 13. I've been driving off and on. So that was the thing, was like I could actually drive. Before I even had a learner's permit, I could drive backwards in my car. I actually did that down the street because there was a big incident with my mother. Got my brothers in the car, drove back down the street backwards. I think at that time I was like 16. Horrible mothering skills, right? But I remember her teaching me how to drive a manual. So when I went and got my license, I got my permit, and I was driving my permit pretty much until I was 18 without taking any classes, because I already knew pretty much how to drive. And my driving was just considered, I had to take people to school.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was driving illegally for years. But I mean, that was also the age that we were living in.
Yeah.
But sidetracked.
Yeah, so back
Microsoft.
back to the Microsoft Sidewinder Force feedback wheel.
Yeah. So this was the first. Oh,
I don't know if I had this specific one, but I had some other knockoff version of it. I don't remember what game it was. I want to say it was like Crazy Taxi or something like that. That might be after the fact. That came out way later. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's I got this just because I was playing whatever game it was at the time a lot, and had to beg my dad. Well, my brother and I both had to beg my dad to get it.
I imagine. Yeah, so this was the first force feedback wheel. It used motors in the wheelbase to simulate the sort of resistance and pull you'd feel while driving a real car. So nowadays you can spend hundreds, probably realistically thousands, on getting a setup. You'd have all like the gear shifter and all the buttons. And, oh, yeah, you could spend so much money on this stuff. It's a lot of fun, but it's more money than I'm willing to dish out.
Oh yeah,
And a lot of times it's more money than it's worth.
Yeah, it's all about the worth that you put into it.
Yeah, if I can see someone this is like what they, well, unless you're streaming and you have the money for it, to build a rig
unless
like this.
you're that level streamer.
Yeah.
Fab the Horizon, whatever the hell that damn
Forza.
Forza, yeah. See, I can't even say it right. Fucking game.
5 letters.
Okay.
That's 4 too many.
I told you, my brain keeps useless knowledge, not about a damn game that's been remade how many times?
Yeah, the name is too useful. Don't
Exactly.
Don't expect this.
Moving on.
So earlier we were talking about the not that abomination, the Sony PlayStation 1 controller, and how like it's kind of like the model for what we use nowadays. But largely that's because other than the joysticks, there really wasn't a significant change between the DualShock and then the original. Yeah. This having 2 joysticks in general is the standard nowadays, not including some mobile configurations, if you will. But yeah, largely it's not significantly changed, but it made all the difference. So yeah.
Well, with this also, it had that analog feature on it.
Yeah. The only thing that sucked was the availability of games that actually used it.
Yeah.
Were kind of limited. Yeah, it didn't really use it much. Like, I remember setting up emulators, and that's what really showed me how many games you don't really use that for, or at least the ones that I wanted to play.
Yeah.
But it was a nice addition, and the most important thing about it isn't so much what it did then, so much as the groundwork that it laid out. Because if I'm not mistaken, I'll double check real quick, but this is definitely the first instance of the joystick as we know it. Because previously joysticks were, well, not that. They at best you'd get the Nintendo 64 with its like 8-sided implementation. It was a true joystick, no doubt, but if you looked closely, there was actually indentation for it to fit into 8 directional grooves. This one could arguably be considered the first true 360 joystick, and largely what we base everything today off of.
Yeah.
So let me scroll. So the DualShock 1997 PlayStation controller. It's pretty iconic. Most people think of this one over the previous PlayStation controller when they think of PlayStation 1, even though this one almost could have just not been on PlayStation. It could have just waited for PlayStation 2 practically.
Yeah, I think with it was kind of an introduction just to kind of test the field.
Yeah, it's a great implementation. It was a little early, but they definitely hit the nail on the head on direction, which, yeah. So moving on, we have something that's kind of not what we just mentioned about being like the future or, all that jazz. The Sega Dreamcast circa 1998. Yeah, this one... Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times on the show in passing. Like the screen, like whenever I'd go to somebody's house, they never had the screen, and I never owned it, so I never like understood what it was for.
It's because the screen was actually a feature that you actually had to buy separately.
Yeah,
which I think was $30 in itself.
Ridiculous.
This is very reminiscent of the Duke.
Yeah, so as you see, they have a controller design where the cord comes out of the bottom of the controller. Better than the Sega that we saw earlier coming out of the side, but still an interesting design choice.
I think on Blockbuster you could actually rent one of these, and I think my uncle did rent one of these, and it's just awkward. Because
it was
I remember
big in your hands.
Yeah, it was just really awkward. This is one of the ones that we can forget about.
Yeah, this is one you actually kind of have to shift your hand around to properly use the D-pad and the thumbstick. Like, they had the general idea well, but the implementation of the ergonomics is just excessively bulky. I mean, look how far I'm going to call them fangs come down past the bottom of the D-pad. Like, why? Why do we need all of that?
They were trying to be different.
Who here has hands that they hold a controller and then the bottoms of their fingers go down to here? Like,
have you seen that image? What our hands are supposed to look like if we evolve to our controllers? I'll find it for you.
That sounds haunting, but please do. Yeah, this one it had a bold controller design, that's for certain. But even with the triggers, it's still just not a good experience in all. They had all the right items, except the way that they put them together in the casing was just a nightmare.
So the centerpiece that was in there, the reason why I think it might have been more, was that certain games, you could upload it to that game, and you could actually continue to play it on the game.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because as I'm looking at this, it actually had a D and A pad.
Oh, yeah. So it had like a mini... think of it like a Game Boy, except smaller.
Yeah, and
like
I think
with
that's...
that being the screen size.
I think that's kind of what this was. There were some games that you could do that with.
Okay.
That integrated with it, and you can continue to play the game, and that's what the idea was with that. Because I knew it was something like that, and so you could. It was also during the time of like Gatchaman, all the little
Tomodachi. Yeah, so basically
Tamagotchis.
it was like walking around playing your Tomodachi, and then you wanted to play it on the big screen, kind of like with what the Switch does now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was like because I don't remember if it was Zelda But I do remember there was a game that did that.
Yeah.
That you could do that with.
But luckily, after this controller came out, it took a few years, but Nintendo finally actually like thought about controller design. It was like, most of our people don't actually have 3 arms, so instead of designing a controller for that, we're just gonna go ahead and make the controller that everybody loved, the Nintendo GameCube, circa 2001. Great controller. I know I myself have heavily abused the C stick in Super Smash Bros. It's the reason why I've won as many times as I have, which is not that much. But it's a number that's above 0.
It is pretty clever if you think about it, how they kind of wanted to morph into the world of dual analog stick, but didn't want to get away with the C stick, as it were.
Yeah.
Because if you look at I'm sure we'll mention here, the Wii U or any of the Switches, they now have dual analog stick, which that right stick serves the same purpose as the C stick used to.
Yeah, they've just kind of escaped from the C stick being its own unique stick, and it's more just, it's there and you can use it for that, but it's a regular joystick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this one, definitely you could see it taking inspiration from the Sony PlayStation controller, but this one kind of took it another step and is, if you only consider where they put groups, like a group of buttons, a joystick, D-pad, other joystick, this one is large, like pretty much where Xbox got a lot of inspiration, if you will. I mean, look at it. It's the exact same setup, except exactly where their place is slightly different, and the controller behind it. The casing's not exactly the same. But yeah, so this one definitely was my favorite controller out of all the Nintendo ones, including ones nowadays. The Wii ones are fun. The Switch ones are pretty much Wii's. They're also fun, but like this, I bought a controller for my Switch that was designed like this, just so that way I'd have it for like Super Smash and stuff. Because it's just, I don't know. To this day, this is still my preferred Nintendo controller.
Yeah, it was pretty much one of the best, if not one of the best, as far as Nintendo goes.
Yeah, I pretty much love this one. I love playing Time Splitters on this.
Yeah, there's not really much to say about this one because like everybody knew it. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you guys have at least seen it. Yeah, it was just great. And so, as I said before, the Xbox one, although it did come out the same year, it definitely looks like it has heavy inspiration from this one. I wouldn't be surprised if they like last minute changed some stuff to make it look similar, because the resemblance is almost uncanny.
I don't know who did this article, but how dare they insult the name of this controller by calling it the fat Xbox?
No,
Right?
it was, though.
I know it was fat, but this is the Duke.
This
Yeah.
this is the fat Xbox.
No, this is the Duke.
Whenever I reference it,
Don't controller shame the
I
Xbox controller.
controller shame this because I either called it the big controller or the fat controller.
Yeah.
Most of the damn time I called it the fat controller.
Stand your ground, man.
Well,
No.
it didn't fit in my hands. I was a kid at this time. I was
We all were kids.
I
We
was a
all
young
suffered
lad, and I
Halo
had small
Combat
hands.
Evolved.
This was
You were
You were kids. He and I were high school.
you guys were young adults.
Now they're old men.
Uh-huh.
Who am I kidding? I'm there too.
and
Yeah, Grandpa.
yet- never mind.
But no, this controller was a bit rough.
You guys were youngins.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, relatively.
I mean, even my deceased brother-in-law. This was we when they eventually came out with the smaller controllers. We always battled over who got the smaller one, and the punishment was you got the fat controller.
I get it's the fat controller.
That's
the
what we
name
said.
of it.
No,
I'm shaming the article.
Don't shame the article.
I want to say even Microsoft referred to it as the fat controller. I remember reading that in an article a few years back. Yeah, feel free to Google that. But yeah, so in this design they brought in the black and white buttons and only had the triggers, as nowadays we're used to bumpers, which is pretty much where black and white went to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this was largely the design that we would continue to have. I preferred the slim one because it fit in my hand better, and two because I ended up getting a wireless third-party controller, and they at this time, this was, of course way before 360, but they actually put the black and white buttons where the today bumpers are, so it was already ahead of its time.
Yeah.
So by then I was already practicing with my four-finger approach for the controller that I now use with the bumpers. So I've been training for this day for a long time.
Okay, so I just looked it up. I just Googled Microsoft Fat Controller or some variation thereof on eBay. It details about Xbox Fat Duke controller. So it's the best of both worlds. So there you go. Leave it at that.
So which one of you guys is accurate? Yes. Yes.
I feel like you cherry picked, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Rigged elections, all that jazz.
Because I guarantee you, a majority of those said fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm taking a poll tonight.
I'll just
Well, while you
No,
contemplate how
it's-
you're going to do a pull, I'm going to move on to the next item.
I already know how I'm going to do it.
So later on, as I mentioned earlier, I got
Hot
a
spam.
thinner or a sleeker profile controller for the Xbox original. But in general, there was a lot of different variations of wireless controllers. This one's for the GameCube. That's really the only significant difference other than what you can see aesthetically. It's the same controller. It's just it was designed for wireless functionality. So there's not really anything to go on there. But again, this is the first adaptation, if you will, of what we now consider to be the standard, which is wireless. So unless you just don't like buying batteries, or you don't, you don't like lag in anywhere, so you have to have wired everything. This is the standard nowadays.
Yeah, I remembered this because this came out, I think, also towards the end of the GameCube's life cycle.
Yeah,
Because Xbox came out with one too,
exactly.
and the difference was between this was that you actually had, as we can see in the picture, you actually had channels that you could select for it versus the Xbox, which was, I think it might have had a channel, but a majority of it was just like an infrared type thing.
Yeah, and this was kind of their practice, I guess, for setting up the Wiimote and Nunchuck, which we got for the Nintendo Wii. It definitely, I'd consider this a revolutionary step in terms of gaming peripherals, because if any of you guys have played the Wii, if you ever did anything that was like even relatively using the wand, if you will, you would know that it really is a different experience. Like playing archery, Wii Sports in general, table tennis, like it turned a game that was relatively commonplace into almost a new experience that you could enjoy in front of your TV, as long as you put the band on.
Yeah.
That way you didn't chuck your Wiimote and Nunchuck into your TV.
those are some great videos to watch.
Right? Doing the boxing and hit your TV. Oh, that'd be terrible.
My brother and I found the way for baseball. Found the way to do the like the fastest pitch you could. You just like that, like barely flick your wrist, and it'd be like fastball. Like, and it was like versus throwing out your arm trying to throw it
Yeah.
as fast as you can. You just barely flick your wrist.
I liked they added a high accuracy adapter later, so that way you could do things like golf and the slight movement of your wrist would be registered. That was pretty interesting. I liked it a lot.
I just found it funny how many games you could play from your couch, even though this was, as
was
you mentioned.
interactive.
It was meant to
Yeah.
get you up and going, which is, you could see from a lot of the add-ons, if you will, that they designed for this peripheral device. An add-on for an add-on, if you will.
Wii Fit.
Yeah, the tennis racket. You could put it on a board, so that way you're actually, instead of just holding it in your hand and trying to line it up. Yeah, there's so many ways. Because I mean, it's not like you could verify. However, there is a device that that did actually make it so you had to get up and do stuff. And I'm gonna skip over it for a second. We'll go back. It was the Kinect that came out on originally on the Xbox 360, circa 2010. This one, pretty fun. It had its flaws, which we'll go over in a minute, but focusing purely on when it was working as it was intended to, it was a lot of fun. Like the game Just Dance was probably one of my favorite to play to it. I don't really care for the game, but playing it on this one was truly an experience. It wasn't just sitting down. Like nowadays, I think if you play it on a game, not on the Switch pretty much, you have to use a controller and you're just like doing stuff. It's terrible. But this one, you're literally your whole body. You had to match the poses exactly. On the Switch, you just have to do the controller thing.
Yeah.
So what were some games that you guys liked playing on this, if you ever tried it?
Just Dance.
Yeah.
That was all the Just Dance parties we did.
Didn't we do that for your birthday once?
Mm-hmm.
I remember bringing Rock Band over, but that's not Kinect.
I think the Just Dance, I did the adventure games.
Yeah.
I remember doing the adventure games. Our real frustration was they didn't have as many games out there with it, and then some of the games just didn't work well with it.
Yeah.
I think, oh gosh, what was that game? I can't remember the game. There was a game that you were your avatar, but you were big people. You were your avatar, and you were macromanaging little people.
Tieflings.
Yes. You could actually use that to control with. Later on, they came out with an update to where you can use it to actually control your guy and do stuff with it. Oh, dude, I played the hell out of that game. I was so mad that they never finished it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, with the Kinect, unfortunately, it just didn't quite pick up. And its greatest failing was that...
or body registry.
Was body registry, especially with people with darker pigmented skin. Once it reached a certain darkness, if you will, it just wouldn't register you as existing due to I believe it was the infrared technology they were using. Darker pigments of color absorb more light rays and more infrared energy than
others.
So unfortunately, that aspect of the technology ended up failing it. But yeah, so as we talked about earlier, the Xbox 360 S, I'm going to say Slim, circa 2005, largely pretty nice. It has the battery pack on the back because they came wireless. Usually had to special or go out of your way to find wired. And then the plug-in at the bottom for chat, because this was definitely the beginning of the age of multiplayer and communication through gaming.
Modern Warfare 2.
Exactly. But other than ergonomic improvements...
Not with that.
The 360?
Modern Warfare 2 is 360 era.
Oh, 360.
Yeah.
But no, I was looking at the date.
Oh, yeah, no, not that.
That's what, that 2005 is what I was...
This controller design, whether it's the placement of the parts on the controller or the ergonomics itself, is more or less survived the entire 360 line, if you will, or the time. So there's not really too much to add to that. Other than they put the Xbox guide button, but that's about it. Otherwise, ergonomically, it's nicer. But yeah. Oh yeah, PlayStation Move. The easiest way to say it is, hey, the Wii looked cool. Can we do it? And the answer was no.
Yeah, I remember Mike picking up this because he had the PlayStation. He picked this.
I picked it. It came
with the PlayStation
because I got SOCOM.
Yeah, and
it sucked.
These things were horrible. I think we spent almost a half hour trying to get everything calibrated so we could play the game, and it just kept on disconnecting.
Yeah, they pretty much, the only good that came out of these was for usage in PlayStation VR, like in 2016. which that also has largely been considered a flop. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think I am. But yeah, so the VR was pretty cool, but only in concept. If you wanted a real VR experience, you were better off actually buying a legitimate setup. But the Wii U came out to supplement the Wii itself in 2012. David probably has the most experience out of all of us with this. You have anything to say about it?
It was pretty cool because this acted as either a second screen or like not a second screen necessarily, but more like you could cheat. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because like when you're playing Mario Kart, you can activate the map and see where everyone's position is on the map. You could see everyone's position. With Super Smash Bros., it acted as a second screen. So if you had 6, 7, 8 people playing, you could be kind of tucked away playing it on the screen like a Game Boy, or you can, play with other people. If you weren't playing, it acted as a like health bar simulator. I think it was really cool. What bothered people about it was how bulky it was. It's literally a tablet, right, with buttons.
It was a bulky precursor to the Switch.
It was so useful for all the games that came out on it, like especially Mario Maker. Like you could not do Mario Maker on any other game console than the Wii U.
Well, that was the one thing that just made me feel like they didn't know what they wanted to do. They didn't know if they wanted to continue making a handheld console or just make a actual console or like a handheld system like their Game Boys or something, or if they just wanted to create a console. That was my one problem with this, was that it was so in between and just how bulky it was. I never really liked this one.
Yeah, and also it was largely just there's a reason why it's on this list. It wasn't even its own console. It was a peripheral of the Wii. So it was a giant tablet. I can't remember how much it was, but I remember it being particularly nice in terms of price range.
Oh no, it was pretty expensive.
It was like almost full
it was
price,
like
right?
Because I bought one.
Because I think it was a little bit almost as much as the Wii console.
Yeah,
and
that's as a peripheral.
Yeah,
because I had it and I played Mario Kart in it for a little bit, but it's kind of like my Switch just kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah,
and I ended up selling it to my old roommate for a couple like $200 or something.
Yeah. So then going forward, this is around the time that the Xbox One finally came out, and the controllers definitely received an upgrade in terms of ergonomics, but I can't say that they're, other than its slim design and really sleek look, it's not really been upgraded much, like in terms of, like revolutionary wise. It's pretty nice, but like don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to downplay it. The ergonomic improvement is amazing, but there's just not really significant change. Like this next controller that we're gonna show, the PlayStation 4, it actually added a touchpad to it, and outside, like its ergonomics also upgraded, and there's plenty of changes to the triggers and stuff like that feel wise, but largely the biggest change in the part that we're focusing on is the addition of the sensing or the touch sense pad in the middle. That adds a lot of functionality. I haven't really played PlayStation too much, but I've heard about the different things that people have reported being able to do in games with it, and see, that's revolutionary.
because I think this was also one that you picked up too, Mike. I think you picked up one of these.
Yeah, I picked up the PlayStation 4.
And
I think I got it on clearance at Sam's Club,
but even then, it was just only a few games that
I got it for Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah,
I literally bought it for one game.
Yeah, and because that's why I thought I knew you only had one, so a lot of the games only really used it once.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. But again, just like how on the PlayStation 1 they added joysticks, which weren't really relevant until the next console, PlayStation 2, and for other gaming consoles. The touchpad here definitely has a lot of forward potential.
Yeah.
But the place that the Xbox really made a big difference is on the Xbox One Elite controller, which I'm also going to expand this to the Elite 2, because visually there's not a significant difference. So I'll just stick with the Xbox Elite 2, just because it's the better of the two. So for the Xbox Elite 2, you can have 3 profiles that are programmed in, and then the basic regular controller. And you can customize anything from the responsiveness of the joysticks and how they do it, whether it's linear or otherwise, to different mappings of the buttons and bumpers. They also added the feature to where you can swap joysticks for different types, whether longer or a different pad on the top, as well as the 4 and 8 directional D-pad, which currently on screen we are showing the 8 directional. But the biggest change would be, or the biggest addition, I should say, would have to be the the bumpers or the tabs, whatever you want to call them, on the back. So there's a selection of paddles. Thank you. There's a selection of up to 4 paddles, which I personally just use 2 on mine, which I control with my ring fingers. And I substitute them for A and B respectively from right and left, but you can customize all 4 to have any other button mapping, and there's some special ones as well. Hey, David.
Mm-hmm. I didn't do anything.
I didn't touch anything either. It kind of just happened. Oh, did it go all the way down?
Yeah, I don't know why it keeps doing that.
Anywho, yeah, so there's a lot of customization options in terms of sensitivity, and the triggers, you can even set them to different capacities, if you will. You can make it so that way it's either full pull, half pull, or immediate. Like it's basically a button.
Yeah, this was one my son has been wanting, is this controller.
Make sure you get the Elite 2, not the Elite 1.
Yeah.
Or wait for the Halo 1 to come out.
They're so expensive.
They are.
They're like $100. They're $100 and something bucks.
I was a different man financially when I bought that.
So the thing that bothered me about this controller is like everybody got pissed off about how people were using modded controller in like Modern Warfare and stuff, and then Xbox just went out and made pretty much a moddable controller.
Where there's some market.
Also, no. I would say that yes, it is modded in that it's a modification from a standard controller, but also like it's not like excessively modded. It's more fine tuning the performance as opposed to adding like the trigger mod where you pull the trigger and it just sends the signal that you've pulled the trigger super fast. Like it doesn't do that, but it's a mechanical feature that makes it so that way the second you touch or pretty much touch the trigger, it's already bottomed out.
Gotcha.
So you're not wrong in the technicality that it is a modified controller compared to standard, but I would argue that the degree of modification is more for fine tuning your performance rather than like getting an edge up on the game in an unfair manner.
Yeah.
But it's definitely paid to have a better experience. It's
most
heavier,
definitely.
which is something I greatly enjoy. Like much better heavier, in my opinion. But as we were talking about previously with the Wii controllers, when the Switch came out, it decided to come out with these little guys, the Joy-Cons.
So honestly, I think this is probably the best thing that they came out with. Even though they're small.
Yeah, they're not quite as good in terms of capturing the 100% of your true movement.
Yeah.
Like I was playing Surgeon Simulator, and it would have issues with getting locked into certain orientations, so you'd have to go and reset it, which really took away from the experience. It would be nice. I don't believe that they sell these, but it would be nice if they sold a more sensitive or more accurate version externally, preferably at the same size that you could click in at least.
Yeah, it would be nice if they updated the gyro sensors, and that's probably what it is. The gyro is just
They're just so tiny, though. They can only fit so much tech in there.
Yeah.
Which, instead of updating their screen, it would be nice if they updated the responsiveness in these controllers in the upcoming release of Switch version 3, I believe we're on. Yeah, the first one had, like, the first one had, regular. It was about, 2 hours of battery life.
Yeah.
The second one, all they did was update the battery life to about 5 hours, depending on what game you're playing. And now this one's supposed to keep 5 hours, I think, maybe 9, but depending on the game you play. But it's upgrading the graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have any comments about the Nintendo Switch. It's just, if from looking at it, the Switch controllers, the Joy-Cons anyways, they look really tiny.
That's
They are.
because
Yeah,
they
they
are.
But they also have they turn sideways, and you do them like that, or they have the controller that they slide into, and
Yeah, I
that's
saw
a
it.
little more. Yeah, it's sitting on by my computer, or they attach onto the side of the screen.
Yeah.
This console itself.
And then last on our list is the most recent controller to have come out. It is largely, it's not significantly different than its predecessors, but there are some features that I did forget to mention until just now that came up in my head. We're going with the Sony PlayStation 5 DualSense controller circa 2020.
Say what you want about this controller, but with how, like, social Xbox wants to have all their content, this was the controller they should have made. Say what you want, but PlayStation 5 knocked it out of the park with this controller. That start button is solely for the menu. That center space is all, does everything you can think of that you want that space to do for the controller. The main menu, whatever. That select button is literally a share to whatever button that captures your screenshot, and it captures your audio from your microphone and from the speaker that's in that controller. And it has a built-in mute button, so if something happens in a game that you're recording, you don't want your voice to pan out, you can mute it. I mean, say what you want about this controller, but PlayStation knocked it out of the park for a social climate that we're in with video games.
Yeah, Game Boy has definitely checked a lot of the boxes on this one. It is...
You mean PlayStation? You said Game Boy.
Well, yeah, I know. He's the one who said it.
Oh. I know.
Let me reiterate.
Yeah.
David has definitely checked off a lot of the boxes on this one.
And I think you're, as far as I know, you're the only one that's actually used it. So, as far as us,
That's right. You're the only one who, out of us, that has been able to have access to a next gen console.
Well,
due to your brother's.
Due
to your brother's.
out of us.
I made like 1770s Great Britain, and I taxed it since he was playing it.
That's fair, and I would do the same if I could.
But yeah, they make it super easy for content creators to put their stuff on Twitter and on YouTube. They have the longest back record time out of both either Xbox or Microsoft. You can record an hour's worth of content and upload it to YouTube. They have a more detailed video editor on their Sony like editor, whatever. I mean, they made it for content creators, and they made it super simple, and you could do all this shit from the controller.
To be fair to Xbox, I will ask a couple questions. One, you say you could record up to an hour. Is that if you preempt it, saying, hey, for the next hour record? Or is it you can record all the stuff you already did up to an hour before?
Is she on the PS5?
no.
Okay. So if I pressed that
Yes.
share button, there's an option on the bottom that says record recent gameplay, and you can select up to an hour.
Wow. Okay, that is very impressive. And do you know about the Xbox's current gen Xbox Series X's parameters on how it does that and how long?
5 minutes for standard definition, 10 minutes for 10 minutes for standard definition, 5 minutes for high definition.
Yeah, Xbox is definitely lacking, especially seeing as how that's a feature that they came out with first, and has seen so little upgrade. Yeah, PlayStation, they've definitely done a lot of good on this.
Now, I'll give it to you because it is still not a comfortable controller. Yeah. It is not a game. When I played Spider-Man and everything, it wasn't something I could sit down for a length of time like I can with the Xbox.
With the Xbox controller, it was focused more for the ergonomics of like general hands. With the PlayStation controller, a lot of people who play a lot of PlayStation, or at least that I've talked to, it was kind of like a something you had to just get used to. And once your hand like crippled itself basically to its shape, then it became comfortable by default. But like, yeah, although the design is better in terms of ergonomics, right? You would say so than past iterations.
I think it's a lot.
It actually has curvature back into it, so it like goes into the nape of your hand.
But you're still trying to grab the controller from the prongs.
I'm just
as
saying
opposed.
Better.
It's a little bit better than the DualShocks of the past. But I'm just saying it's still not as comfortable because the controller is designed for you to grab it from those prongs on the bottom, not from the control. You're essentially hold your arms up. If it's like pulling an individual by their arms rather than their shoulders. You're not going to get as much tension because if I grab him like this, he can just yank himself out from me, as opposed to his shoulders. I have more of a grasp, like holding on to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's probably, for example.
From the controller's perspective, it's an improved in ergonomics. The rumble sensors in the triggers, R1s, R2s, L1, L2, seems to be greatly improved. It seems like overall the experience is a lot better.
I just want to know how many times did you have to clean up after you touched this controller?
What do you mean?
What about before you touched the controller?
That's what I mean.
What do you mean?
Continue.
We'll leave that to your imagination.
But
yeah, overall, they definitely hit one out of the park. It'd be nicer if it was more comfortable in the hand, like the Xbox controller that has been consistently anti-hand fatigue. But overall, for the progress they did make, it looks quite significant, and I look forward to being able to try it after Jeremy finally learns how to share.
But that's also my thing is that Xbox has always been like that, though.
Yeah.
They want you in front of their consoles longer.
Except for the fat controller.
Well,
they learned their lesson fast. Sony
yes.
PlayStation is still like, hey, it has cool stuff, so maybe we don't have to like actually let you enjoy holding it.
But I believe is Xbox going the way of PlayStation, right?
There's talks about them kind of doing some sort of hybrid. Their biggest thing has been the ergonomics of their controller, so I can't imagine them willfully like getting rid of that particular aspect of it. But like, that's so terrible. That's kind of what my hands do, except it's not like weird looking like that.
I just think that
Spock hands.
Xbox has the space for a lot of that stuff to put on there already.
Oh, they totally could.
They have they make a few adjustments, but the reason why I think Xbox's controllers have always been a big hit is because it's more comfortable in your hand, and it's always been more comfortable besides the Fat Boy. Actually, to be truthful, even the Fat Boy, even though it was bulky as hell, it still felt a little bit better than the PlayStation.
I hear you.
To be truthful.
You're not wrong. I was prepared to diss you, but you came back. So it's in my hands.
Honestly, we joke around about the Fat Boy and the Duke, but
the Duke Boy,
even being as big as it was, it still felt comfortable in your hand. And I honestly, that's the one thing I love about Xbox's controllers is because it always feels comfortable in your hand. You can literally sit there and play for hours. Even when you had the Xbox text feature on the little chat thing on the bottom.
That one I had some difficulties with, but it was still, even with that equipped, it was better than the the PlayStation.
Yeah, it's for the most part, hands down. I think the Xbox has always will have the better controllers.
The basic design that they're gonna go with, I can't imagine them changing it. At most, they might make it slightly wider.
Yeah.
But the parts that your hands are in contact with, and the most important parts, I can't imagine them messing with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only honorable mention I have right now, and it's just a quick one, I promise, is like Rock Band controllers, where they brought like guitars and
well, those
drum
were
sets,
actual peripherals.
Yeah,
these were just the controllers through history. Those were actual peripherals.
I did say gaming peripherals, so those I intended to be an honorable mention because I knew they weren't on the list. But a lot of fun and yeah, hours upon hours of entertainment. I remember a friend of mine had a birthday and he really wanted to play them, so I brought my entire set over to his residence, and we had a lot of fun with that.
Lucky guy.
Did he really?
Well, he asked me to borrow his drum set or my drum set for a couple years. So
for a couple years.
Well, it was a gift at that point.
Actually, I think I was at that party.
Yeah, you were.
I think that's when I first met you.
So
that one.
Good times.
Let's talk about mental illness another time.
So, Mike, what is your final thoughts on this?
There's a lot more controllers throughout the things than I'm sorry, I cannot stop staring at that.
Can you please change that? That's why I'm not looking over that way. It's just unsettling.
Okay, they don't see it, but we still do.
But there were a lot more controllers than I realized there were. Like,
Yeah.
It has been a lot of iterations, trial, and most certainly error to get to where we are now.
Yeah. Like I didn't realize that there were so many different controllers prior to the NES. I was familiar with most of them, if not all of them, after that. I think there might have been one or two that I wasn't familiar with. Like
The Apple.
Yeah,
And this
there
was
was the Apple one, the Octagon thing. I don't remember
I know
that.
the Octagon thing. I wanted one of those.
And this was pretty much only console
Yeah.
controllers, not including ones on PC, because there's more.
Well,
Yeah.
we should say this is more geared towards mainstream console.
Exactly.
Because the Octagon was considered kind of one that you could really use with it.
Yeah.
Versus some of the other ones. Like the Power Glove, the gun that we mentioned that wasn't on here.
Just largely console focused.
forgot about
because
the
that
Power
was
Glove.
the
Which never worked.
Or the for the NES, there was for the track and field game, the mat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
good times.
They even came out with, for Xbox, they came out with a DDR pad.
I remember.
Yeah.
that.
How did I
We'll have a
failed you
whole
guys.
new episode dedicated to actual peripherals.
All
But yeah, that's my final thoughts.
right. David?
Yeah, controller's cool. Yeah, all that jazz.
You're yeah. My final thought is just it's just interesting to kind of see how stuff's been going over the years, especially each of these are kind of going with the systems, but now we're kind of in a copy paste type thing. You know, we change little stuff here and there. It'll just be interesting if someone makes a big push to kind of like where we've been going with VR and stuff like that to actually, I would love to see Nintendo push that because they're almost already there. And to actually, because they had that with the Wii where they had that infrared stuff. So I think if Nintendo can actually push that a little bit further, I think they'll be the next big, I think that might bring them back on the top. And if they can get better systems.
Yeah.
So
As you guys have seen or heard, Game Peripherals, has definitely experienced quite an evolution over time. As the pattern shows, once a good idea comes out, a lot of people copy it until something revolutionary comes out, and then it diversifies for a second. But it tends to always focus on a specific configuration, and that's kind of where we find ourselves right now, is the 4 buttons, 4 bumper trigger setup, 2 sticks, and a D-pad. And so we're just waiting now, I guess, for the next evolution, which could be VR, or it could be something completely different. And I'm sure, just as you guys are, I'm very excited to find out what that is and how terrible it's going to be until it's improved.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on. Is it turned up all the way? There we go.
No.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Strike Team Game Presents the Level 4 Experience. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and say gaming peripherals. Join us next time when we talk about other stuff and other pre-scheduled episodes. If you haven't already, please make sure you check out the channel description for all the links, link trees, and ways you can contact us and get in touch with each and every one of us down below. Make sure whatever listening service you're listening to us on, you leave us a review, please. We listen and love every single one of our supporters, and thank you for all the reviews and support we've gotten since endeavoring on this. Join us next time for potentially more gaming news and other pre-scheduled episodes. I've been here with
Irishguy, aka Mike.
This is Doc.
And Zmainia.
everybody. Have a good day, have a good night, have a good week. I've been Game Boy. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.